Amid the ongoing bitterness between India and Canada, Indian External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar met US Secretary of State Antony Blinken in Washington. Well, Jaishankar arrived in Washington from New York after addressing the 78th General Assembly session of the United Nations on Tuesday. And the two met and discussed ways to further bilateral relations. A short State Department readout listed topics like India's G20 presidency, the creation of an India-Middle East-Europe corridor, and topics also like defense, space, and clean energy. Take a listen.
It's a pleasure to welcome my friend and colleague, Foreign Minister Jaishankar, here to the State Department, back to Washington. We've had very good discussions over the last weeks, of course, at the G20, in New York at the General Assembly, and I'm looking forward to pursuing them this afternoon.
Thank you, Tony. Good to be back here, and we, of course, had the Prime Minister here this summer. We thank the US for all the support at the G20 summit, and I actually look forward to seeing you in Delhi for the 2+2.
While the meeting between the two top diplomats was scheduled much before the Canadian crisis broke out, the US has been urging India to cooperate in the Canadian investigation into the killing of Khalistani separatist Hardeep Singh Nijjar in British Columbia earlier this year, which we've been closely tracking here on WION. Well, the meeting came just hours after Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said that he was sure that Blinken would raise the murder of a Khalistani terrorist with his Indian counterpart. That is when the two meet. Trudeau had earlier accused India of having a hand in Nijjar's killing in Canada. The allegations touched off a diplomatic crisis with the two countries, expelling diplomats and India then suspending visas to Canadians. This comes as hackers calling themselves the India Cyber Force have claimed to have targeted the Canadian Armed Forces official website. The group, which does not have any formal links to New Delhi, claimed on Telegram that it had taken down the website. Reports say that the group had posted a message hinting at the cyber job a week prior to the hacking attempt. And according to the experts, the cyber attack is believed to be a distributed denial of service assault aimed at sending a message to the Canadian government. Well, the head of media relations at the Department of National Defence told the Canadian media that the disruption started around noon on Wednesday, before it was rectified later in the day. The Canadian forces, which represent all military operations for Canada, including the Navy, Special Command Groups, air and space operations, are investigating the current issue. And for more on this, our correspondent Susan Tharani sends us this report from New York. Take a look.
The meeting between U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and his Indian counterpart S. Jaishankar was scheduled well before the diplomatic spat between New Delhi and Ottawa. But as the two men met on Thursday, while neither publicly addressed the issue, U.S. officials said that they expected Antony Blinken to bring up the killing of the Khalistani terrorist in Canada earlier this summer with his Indian counterpart. The U.S. is walking a diplomatic tightrope between its NATO ally and neighbor Canada and India, which it considers a strategic partner in countering China in the Indo-Pacific region. And how this drama unfolds ultimately depends on how much evidence Ottawa will be able to muster. And what happens next? Well, U.S.-India relations will remain unbothered. However, those relations with Canada, at least under Justin Trudeau, may perhaps be another story. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION World this one.